Hi, I'm John Little, and this is the ShockCast for Friday, April 6th, 2018, but recorded on a chilly late afternoon in northern Taipei on April 7th, 2018, a Saturday. In this era of insanity, very little in our world seems to make sense. It's as if the people around us are living in an alternate reality vastly different from the one that you and I live in. And it is that insanity that will destroy the world. Worse, the insanity is so great, so broad, and so deep that pointing it out to those who suffer from it will get you nowhere. They are caught in the grip of madness, and we would do well to stay as far from its grasp as possible. If you think that you aren't vulnerable, think again. Now, an important note, I am trying to make progress on what Yahoo, Gmail, and Hotmail, and Outlook.com have been doing because they are blocking the shock letter. Working hard to try to stop that block. I might have made progress in getting them to stop doing that, and I will continue my efforts to convince them that the shock letter is not spam. Lord willing, affected users will be able to receive the shock letter in their inbox as soon as possible. Unfortunately, if you are still affected, I won't be able to respond to any of your emails when you ask about this. I'm sorry, you're blocking my responses, not just the shock letter. Yesterday was, or should I say, Thursday, was the 7th anniversary of an epiphany that launched Omega Shock. It was the mind-blowing realization, 7 years ago, that Iran was doing something that I predicted that they would do, and they still are planning to do it. In fact, let me roll back time to September 13th, 2007, when I sat down to think about, and then write, how Iran could achieve her goals. And with all the hoopla surrounding the Mayan calendar foolishness, I decided to accelerate the timeline to see if I could fit the destruction of America and Israel and Iran's domination of the world in before the close of 2012, as they were claiming. Well, they weren't claiming 2012, but you know what I mean. Unfortunately, for my peace of mind, I was able to fit everything in my scenario before 2012, and found myself profoundly shaken by this scenario. Fortunately, events did not follow that timeline as quickly as they could have. However, the world still seems to like my scenario, even though their pace is more sedate. And the world has not stopped there. Back in 2011, when I heard what Reza Khalili said, I remember pacing back and forth in our apartment. I'd been asleep, and my 2007 prediction was proving to be more prophetic than intended. I immediately launched into an intense effort to figure out what else I had been missing, and I uncovered a host of problems that were breathtaking in size and severity. Any one of those threats could destroy us all, and we had several of them pointing at us. Just look at the About page for Omega Shock. These 5 things lie in our future and will destroy us if we keep ignoring them. Natural resource collapse, financial catastrophe, Lucifer, the rejection of God, and Ezekiel's fire. There are more items that I could put on that list, but they all seem to be connected to one of those 5. And even those 5 are really only connected to one thing: insanity. If we weren't completely insane, we could navigate around the resource collapse that we have already begun to experience. If we weren't completely insane, we wouldn't have created a financial structure that will destroy millions, even billions of lives. If we weren't completely insane, Lucifer wouldn't have any minions, and what minions he did have would have no power over us. If we weren't completely insane, Christians would not be rejecting God and following teachers who would scratch their itching ears. If we weren't completely insane, our lives would not be vulnerable to the destruction of the electricity power grid. Unfortunately, we are completely insane, and I'm sure that you can add your own examples of how insane we are in the comments section. In fact, please do. And if everyone else is completely insane, how about you and me? In this era of insanity, I have come to realize that we are not invulnerable to the mass delusions that sweep through our society. If we choose to walk the same path that our less sane brothers and sisters walk, we will succumb to the same mental problems that they have. For instance, I have a good friend, a great brother in Christ, who believes that cow farts cause global warming. I have another friend, a tremendous and godly sister in Christ, who was going to vote for Hillary Clinton before God shook her awake. And I have met very few people who truly understand that natural resources are not infinite. I could go on and on, in fact I have, but the bottom line is that we are at great risk of infection by a disease that inhabits the minds of a society racing headlong into the abyss. I run into victims of this disease all the time, and I can hardly believe that such seemingly rational people have faith in ideas that are so crazy. But then again, I can look back and see some pretty irrational thinking in my own life. How is it possible that I could have been that crazy? Well, it is possible, which is why I write what I write. In this horrifying era of insanity, we are all vulnerable to being pulled into the abyss, along with everyone else. The only thing that will keep you from that is God. I was tempted to say God and the truth, but God is the truth. There can be no truth without God, and when I look around me, I realize that there can be no sanity without God. To put it another way, the only truly sane people in this world are Christians. Even then, I know that I'm stretching the definition of truly sane to its breaking point. I don't know about you, but I doubt that anyone can be truly sane in this awful world. That brings to mind a saying that has been attributed to Desiderius Erasmus. In regione caecorum rex est Lucius. In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. Unfortunately, we cannot say the same about sanity. In the land or era of the insane, the truly sane are despised. And if you think that we have hit rock bottom in our insanity, think again. To quote Winston Churchill, "Now this is not the end. It is not even the beginning of the end, but it is perhaps the end of the beginning." I concur. In our insane rush into the abyss, we have only just begun. Now, I was tempted when I began this piece to rush off in a different direction. I sometimes cave into temptation and do that, but I really wanted to talk about sanity or insanity. So I promised myself that I would quote my Doomsday article at the end of this piece. So here it is. From September 13th, 2007, written on IsraelOutlook.com. So to begin, I've been thinking about Ahmadinejad's confident claims that he can take out the U.S. and Israel and achieve dominance for Islam. How could he possibly do that without the help of thermonuclear bombs in the multi-megaton range? We also call them hydrogen bombs or H-bombs, and they are beyond his capability to make. And I can't believe that Russia would let him have any. However, I was given the idea of a decapitation strike by WorldNet Daily. They talked about using electromagnetic pulse, or EMP. This EMP strike would only require a few medium-yield nuclear warheads, only a few medium-range missiles, and every unshielded electronic element device thingy in the Western world would be toast. I originally thought that the whole idea was just shrill blather until I did my research. It's not shrill, and it's not blather. It's just really, really awful. So let me play out a scenario that I've been thinking about. The first bit, up to today, except one, has already been documented as happening. and that one bit is a pretty reasonable assumption. Remember, as I'm writing this, it's 2007. The events after 2007 are yet to occur. Let's get started. June 1989. Iranian President Hashemi Rafsanjani goes to Moscow and signs an agreement to procure advanced Soviet weapons. 1990. American successes in the Persian Gulf prompt the Soviets to create a closer, more intimate relationship with Iran. Early winter 1998. In Russia, the dramatic fall of the Soviet Union and the crash of the ruble has impoverished the guards at the Krasnomaryevskoye nuclear weapons depot. Special Pasdaran operatives of the Quds Force of Iran bribed the guards to allow a truck in and out of the depot. It's only that last sentence that we aren't sure about. Spring 1999. Russian nuclear weapons scientists and specialists struggling to survive on meager salaries are offered generous compensation by Iran to do research and development. January 2004. A.Q. Khan, father of the Pakistani atom bomb, admits to transferring nuclear weapons material to Iran. 2004. The mayor of Tehran, the capital of Iran, secretly instructs the city council to construct a broad avenue for the coming of the Mahdi. The mayor's name is Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. February 2005. Russia signs agreement with Iranians to supply fuel rods to Iranian nuclear reactors at Bushehr. August 2005. Engineer, Revolutionary Guards commander, and the founder of the Quds Force, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad is elected as president of Iran on a platform of poverty relief and the destruction of the U.S. and Israel. October 2005. Ahmadinejad proclaims that Israel must be wiped off the map. 2006. Ahmadinejad is known to be secretly meeting with the Mahdi, the Islamic Messiah. Islamic prophecies surface that the destruction of Israel will hasten the coming of the Mahdi. In fact, is necessary. Late summer 2007, troop surge by U.S. forces succeeds in limiting effectiveness of insurgents, but does not result in real political change. Now, this is where in this article that I began my what if. Everything that I said up till now has already happened, except the part where we're not sure if the Iranians were able to bribe those guards at that nuclear weapons depot. But are you going to tell me that they wouldn't take the opportunity when they found out about it? Yeah, me too. Anyway, 2008. Nervous about America's growing influence in the Middle East and the EU's closer ties to the Ukraine, Russia strengthens ties with Iran. It happened, but again, we're still speculating as of this point. Summer 2008. The U.S. economy descends into a shallow dip recession. Boy, did I get that wrong. It wasn't shallow dip, but it certainly was a recession. Fall 2008. A Democrat president is elected on a platform of jobs and bringing the troops home. Spring 2009. The U.S. begins force reduction and starts repositioning forces towards Baghdad. Summer 2009. Russia and Iran hold their first joint military exercises along with other CIS states, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Georgia, Moldova, and Uzbekistan. Turkey attends as an observer. Fall 2009. Nervous about Turkey's growing Islamism and slow progress on democratic reform, Germany and France finally succeed in convincing the EU to freeze accession talks. Upset over the insult to national pride, the Turkish government asks the EU delegation to leave and recalls its ambassadors from European capitals for consultation. They don't return. Winter 2009. Mahmoud Ahmadinejad visits Ankara, the capital of Turkey. Turkey and Iran announce new cooperative agreements in trade. Turkey announces that it has withdrawn from the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO. Spring 2010. Turkey and Iran join a newly rejuvenated Commonwealth of Independent States, CIS, as associate members. Russian advisors start appearing among the staff of Iranian and Turkish generals. Summer 2011. CIS military exercises include units from Ethiopia, Sudan, Chad, Syria, and Libya. Western observers begin expressing nervousness over the growing military power of CIS forces. February 2012. The Russian president travels to Ankara for anticipated talks. Both Russia and Turkey announced that Turkey will be hosting the largest military maneuvers since World War II. March 2012. Late at night off the deserted coast of Louisiana, 3 rubber boats race away from a Panamanian freighter, pounding through 5-foot waves. Rain lashes at the muffled figures in the heaving boats. As they land, men jump out and wrestle several heavy packages to the sand. They send a sequence of flashes to the ship. They deflate their boats and bury them. May 2012. Israeli intelligence agencies report that they have detected the use of a new type of warhead for Iranian long-range and intermediate-range ballistic missile forces. Israeli Dolphin-class submarines depart Haifa en route to the Persian Gulf. 6 Panamanian-flagged tramp freighters leave the port city of Chabahar. June 2012. Intelligence sources indicate that Iranian missile forces have deployed nuclear warheads on their Shahab-4 missile batteries. North American and European leaders increase diplomatic pressure on Iran. The U.S. president proposes new sanctions and threatens the use of military force. From U.S. Armed Forces Command in Iraq, the Israeli requests IFF transponder codes and permission to overfly Iraqi airspace. Their request is denied. The U.S. State Department warns that Israeli aircraft will be shot down if they violate Iraqi airspace. July 2012. Concerned that Iranian forces are preparing to use nuclear weapons against Israel, the Israeli government finally okays a strike against Iranian nuclear forces. At midnight on July 12th, 3 Boeing 707 refueling aircraft disguised as commercial aircraft of either the Egyptian or Jordanian airlines takes off at intervals of 90 minutes and enter Saudi airspace, transmitting civilian transponder codes. At 2 a.m., 24 F-15I aircraft take off from Ovda Air Base in the southern Negev and enter Saudi airspace, flying 30 feet above the desert floor. Within hours, mushroom clouds bloom over the mountains of Iran as the Israeli aircraft drop 48 precisely targeted low-yield nuclear bombs. A large part of the Iranian arsenal and weapons production capability is destroyed, but only a large part. A firestorm of diplomatic vilification descends upon Israel. Iran invokes the common defense provisions of the CIS Charter. August 15, 2012. Russian, Iranian, Turkish, African, and CIS Army and Air Force units begin assembling in southeastern Turkey near Incirlik and Iskenderun. The U.S. and EU demand that all respective governments show restraint and stand down from their aggressive posture. The UN Security Council meets and Russia demands that Israel disarm its nuclear weapons, pay reparations, and accept a massive multinational force to oversee the disarmament. The U.S., still reeling from Israel's use of nuclear weapons, abstains, and the motion passes. Foreign nationals are advised to leave Israel. Congress begins debating resolutions requiring the U.S. president to intervene. No motion successfully passes. September 19, 2012. On Monday at 11 a.m., a pair of service technicians wrestle an air conditioning unit onto a service elevator and punch the button for the very top floor in the Sears Tower in Chicago. A library book mobile rolls down Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C. A heavily loaded bakery van drives past Trafalgar Square on its way towards Downing Street in London. An early morning cleaning team wrestle their extra-large trash can onto a freight elevator and punch the button for the 73rd floor of the U.S. Bank Tower in Los Angeles. 5 medium-yield nuclear explosions take out Lower Manhattan, downtown Chicago, and the center of Washington, D.C., the government center of London, and the center of Los Angeles. The upper echelon of the political, military, and civilian leadership of the U.S. and Britain cease to exist. Throughout the U.S. and Europe, small groups of men set off bombs at refineries, bridges, electrical switching stations, railroad depots, and port facilities. Buildings are destroyed and fires begin to rage. Traffic and communications are snarled and the fires begin to grow. As the nuclear mushroom clouds rise ever higher over the LA, New York, Chicago, Washington, and London, 5 Panamanian freighters lie more than 20 miles off the coasts of Japan, California, New York, Texas, and Germany. One lies in the middle of the South China Sea. A long hatch in each freighter opens, revealing the elegant nose of a Shahab-4 missile. Within 2 minutes, the missile launches, racing into the sky on a column of fire. Within moments, the missiles leave the atmosphere, and there are 6 flashes of brilliant light over each freighter. Each flash generates a massive pulse of electromagnetic energy over all of Europe, the US, Southeast Asia, and Japan. Computer systems, switching platforms, pumping stations, power plants, hospitals, and airplanes cease to function. In fact, every advanced electrical and electronic device ceases to work. The fires started by the terrorists begin to rage out of control as water pressure falls to 0. As the nuclear fallout begins to rain down upon shocked and horrified onlookers, the nations of Europe, North America, and Japan come to a grinding halt and begin to die. Food spoils in refrigeration units, gas stations cannot pump fuel, refineries cannot produce the fuel that the gas stations cannot distribute. Electronically managed cars cannot start or even stop. The planes that survive cannot fly, and those already in the air fall out of the air. America, Europe, Japan, and Southeast Asia are reduced in an instant to a 19th century existence. Then another missile lofts into the air from the area of southeast Turkey. It doesn't quite leave the atmosphere, and when it arrives over Israel, its nuclear warhead explodes, creating yet another yet less massive electromagnetic pulse that takes out all of the unshielded electronics in Israel, which unfortunately includes Arrow anti-missile batteries defending northern Israel and the bases in the south. Several more missiles are launched from southern Turkey, and mushroom clouds appear on the Golan, Dimona bases in the Negev, and Tel Aviv. September 20th, 2012. Using the passage of the UN Security Council resolution, the massive armed force begins advancing towards Israel. They expect to arrive at the border of Israel before September 26th, the holiest day in Jerusalem, Yom Kippur. Within hours, Western civilization has crumbled and Israel lies defenseless against one of the largest military formations ever put on the field. That was written more than 10 years ago. The timing was off. Intentionally so. And the events haven't quite followed the plan. The recession turned out to be far worse than expected. Ahmadinejad is no longer in power, and Israel won't be using F-15I aircraft, should they choose to strike Iran. As for the rest, well, it seems like all of that is in our future. And then, let's not forget that Ezekiel's fire sits at the end of this scenario. I remember after I finished writing that I was profoundly depressed. That was a hard article to write. And it's still hard to think about. My hope is that you understand that this is in our future. Something like this is going to happen. The details might be somewhat different. But when you add Ezekiel's fire into all this, not good. Well, let's get on to something a little less dreary, hopefully. The research for this past week, although some of it is completely insane. But let's start with a little more positive. A reader, one of the Mega Shock readers, wrote, and they have a webpage called To Build a School, our school building adventure in rural Kenya. I love Omega Shock readers. All of you are awesome, and I love the stories that you share about your lives. It is surprising how similar we all are while being so different, and I am truly blessed that so many have shared their lives with me. And when I see something that I can share with everyone, I jump at the chance. This time, it was John and Sarah Reish. Or Richie? I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. Who are engaged in something that is truly awesome. And they share some of that awesomeness in their website that they created about their trip or their work in Kenya. And they write exceptionally well. And I love good writing. In fact, I'm a sucker for it. Better yet, it's an opportunity for you to stand with them in their work in Kenya. Bookmark their website. Make them a friend on Facebook. Let them know that you are praying for them. God bless you, John and Sarah. I am really impressed with what you two are doing. Well done. The next one is Ravi Zacharias drops truth bomb on Joel Osteen and his followers. It's a YouTube video. DRG shared this from the comment section, and it's horrifying. How can Joel Osteen be so dead to Jesus? I'm sorry, but there's no way that Joel could be a Christian. However, if he is, and again, I'm not the one who's the judge in this, he's so weak and near death that he won't be a Christian for long. But it was good to hear Ravi Zacharias speak on this. Thank you, DRG. The next one is Keep Going, This Too Shall Pass, thetollonline.com. This article meanders a bit, going from a discussion of generational cycles to Donald Trump and back again. But some of the best articles do that. Mine, for instance. The bottom line of this article is that we are entering an age of horrifying possibility and a political winter. And there is tyranny in our future. Whether you like it or not, whether you are prepared or not, the worst is still ahead. I just wish that I was as optimistic as this writer. But that's okay. I'm pretty pessimistic. The interesting thing, and as I add to what I've written here, we are all experiencing cycles. And as I look at the various cycles within a grand cycle, I see serious destruction ahead. It's almost as if all these cycles are reaching a certain point to cause the most destruction possible. I will be paying attention to this, and I will continue to be reporting on it wherever I see it. My hope is that you will take these things to heart, because what lies ahead is mind-blowing. The next is Angry Bear, The Grand Illusion 2.0. People who view the world through rose-colored glasses will always lead their countries to destruction. Rosy fantasies have always resulted in the destruction of the fantasist and have always resulted in the destruction of the fantasist, and America is no exception. In fact, if you want an illustration, look no further than the first part of this article, The Grand Illusion 2.0. Quote, "First, let me pose a thought experiment. Country A and Country B propose to enter into Agreement X. We have no idea at all what Agreement X is, but we know that the result will be that both Country A and Country B will each be richer by $1 trillion each and every year thereafter. Country A, close quote, Country A, being an egalitarian paradise, is going to share out the proceeds equally among its population of 250 million, with each person getting $4,000 per year." Quote, the next quote, "The dictator of Country B is going to do the same with half of its $1 trillion gain, making his population very happy, but because this is his personal aim, he is going to spend the other 500 billion each and every year in building up its military so that it can challenge and eventually vanquish country A, and then keep all of the gains of Agreement X to itself. Should country A enter into Agreement X? Close quote. Foolish humans will always sell their enemies the rope that will be used to hang them with. And it makes me want to scream. Why do we have to be so stupid? And this is all a part of when looking at the trade agreements that we've made with horrible, horrible countries. Why are we doing this? I don't know. Well, actually, I kind of do know. It's called greed and stupidity. But within that, anyway. The next one is Richard Heinberg on why low oil prices do not mean there is plenty of oil. EROI, collapse. EROI means energy returned on invested, or the other way of putting it is energy returned on energy invested. This is from Peak Energy and Resources, Climate Change, and the Preservation of Knowledge, or under that category. Energy is not a commodity like others, and our economic theories don't seem to realize this. Grain, steel, cotton, and a host of other commodities can rise and fall based on market dynamics and physical limits to production. But because energy is the bedrock of an economy, its rise and fall have different causes and effects. When the electricity turns off or the trucks stop running, there is no economy, at least not in the way that we understood it to be. Without energy, our economic theories aren't relevant. Before peak oil happened, and yes, we have passed peak oil years ago, the price of oil fell because the global economy entered a recession. But now, after peak oil, it is the fall in production that is causing the price of oil to fall in value. That probably didn't make sense, but that's okay. I'm about to explain. Let's take trucking for an example. Let's say that you have 10 trucks. Your 10 trucks are churning through 10 gallons of fuel a day each. That's 100 gallons a day. What happens when you can only get 90 gallons a day? Well, one truck stays home. That also means that 10% of your profits are destroyed. In fact, it might mean that more than 10% of your profits are destroyed, since your customers will take a hit too. And as this 10% reduction in output ripples through the system, you will find yourself with less money to spend on fuel. The fuel might be there, but you have even less money to pay for it. What happened to the employees that you had to fire? Well, they can't pay for the fuel in their own cars, so the price keeps going down. As this happens, there will be an oil glut that will remain until it has been used up. In fact, there will be an increase and decrease in available oil as the total amount available continues to decline. Basically, it'll reverberate up and down as it slowly continues to decline. Or as you can put it another way, nothing moves in a straight line, so don't be fooled by the fact that gasoline or petrol isn't $10 a gallon. It may never be, even while we're running out. Hopefully that made sense. If it doesn't, stick around. I'll eventually be talking about these kinds of subjects again. But economic theory isn't, well, it's still theory. We're not into facts yet. And we haven't really, well, as we're looking at these things, the fall in the availability of oil is not understood. Our modern economic theories, the modern ones, the ones that were created in the 1900s, were created with on the back of a financial system created by oil. Remember that. The banking system that we have today was created by the oil barons. Okay, moving on. This is from Of Two Minds, Charles Hugh Smith. What if all the cheap stuff goes away? If you spend any time looking at history, you will quickly understand that we live in truly luxurious times. or that we did live in luxurious times. The problem is that our luxurious times are the result of cycles coming together to bring about innovation, abundant energy, and lots of food. Lots. And let's not forget the weather. It's been awesome, but it's about to get less and less awesome in the near future. In fact, it has already begun to turn less awesome. As I look out the window, it's kind of cold out there today. This is occurring at a bad time. A real bad time. In fact, for me, it's always a bad time. Just as the weather starts to turn colder, our fuel and transportation costs are about to rise. Just as our transportation costs are about to rise, trade barriers are on the rise as well. And also the threat of disease. We are reaching the grand finale, the great crescendo. Few will survive. The next one is University Event aims to combat Christian privilege, from the College Fix. I want to put this in the moron section, but it's actually more serious than that. Yes, these are morons. But this is a class of moron that is attempting to attack and destroy our faith, yours and mine. And these are the same kinds of people, morons, that have been killing Christians for 2,000 years. Unfortunately, because this is Satan at work, there's nothing that you can do in the physical realm. Yes, you can exert political pressure, but Satan is far better at that than you or I. And as Paul points out in Ephesians 6, we do not fight against a physical enemy. We fight against a spiritual one who wants us destroyed. The bottom line is that you cannot fight a spiritual war with physical weapons. Next one is Corsi. Donald Trump is about to arrest Obama and Clinton. A YouTube video. Is Donald Trump getting ready to declare martial law? In a sense, he already has, and his declaration of a state of emergency is just sitting on top of what was declared in 2001 after 9/11. But arresting people and putting them in front of military tribunals? That is pretty serious. Now, you might rejoice in all that, and a part of me will join you. But it will also be a horrendous defeat for the rule of law and for America's Republican form of democracy. Martial law is always destructive to that social contract that we call the rule of law. Martial law is about brute force. It's about rule from above. It's the same kind of thing that Julius Caesar did when he crossed the Rubicon. Maybe Trump will be different, but don't bet on it. The next one is The Ugly Truth About Diversity, from Katie Hopkins and Stefan Molyneux, a YouTube video. Katie Hopkins has been doing an awesome job revealing the horrifying effects of the Islamic invasion of Britain and America, and more recently, the terrifying outlook for the white farmers of South Africa. I highly recommend that you listen or watch this video. You get a deeper picture of what she has been reporting on, and you will have a clearer, more sympathetic look at Katie herself. I'm very impressed, and you will be too when you watch that video. The next one is Venezuela's Oil, Bankruptcy and Cryptocurrency, a Visualpolitik EN YouTube video. This is horrifying. 9 out of 10 Venezuelans are in poverty. And that's the international standard for poverty, not the American or European standard. This means that there is going to be a cataclysm of insane proportions in Venezuela. The question is about the knock-on effects. Since we don't know who has invested in Venezuelan bonds, we don't know who is vulnerable to a complete default. And I think that we're about to find out soon. The next one is England slides closer to communism. Malnourished children fill pockets with food. This is heartbreaking. And you will ache over this article, at least if you have a soul. However, I'm not sure that communism is the culprit. Big government and government stupidity. That sounds like the culprit. After all, Britain's government has been welcoming Muslim rapists and pedophiles into their country for years and paying them to not work. To pay for all that, Britain has been taxing her people to death. But that doesn't change the fact that there are children arriving in school so malnourished, so starving. Well, it's just heartbreaking. I'm sorry. The next one is catastrophic for the Catholic Church. World media reacts to Pope Francis' denial of hell. LifeSite News. Here's more on Pope Frankie's claim that there is no hell. How is it possible that you can claim to be a Christian while rejecting what the Bible says? Of course, Catholics have been doing this for 2,000 years, so I shouldn't be shocked by this. And yes, if you are a Catholic, you are deliberately rejecting parts of what the Bible actually says, and then adding to what it does not say. I'm not saying that you're not saved. I'm not your judge. What I am saying, and what I am a judge of, is when you present ideas and thoughts that are not from the Bible, or when you delete parts of the Bible of what it does say. That's wrong. And I'm sorry, if you're willing to do that, I have to wonder, are you really a Christian? But again, I'm not your judge. That's for God. Next is why Americans are avoiding the doctor, from Market Watch. That Obamacare sure is working great, right? Right? Obamacare. Oh, what a great idea. Why do we need to be so stupid? Yeah, and yes, the operative word is we. We Americans demanded that this program be implemented. We did this. We. Otherwise, you would shout down your congressman and senator and then vote him out of office if he doesn't listen. And I'm sorry, those are the facts. So the question is, are you going to, if you're an American and listening to this, are you going to shout down your congressman and or senator and get them to vote Obamacare out? If not, sorry, this is going to happen. The next is how Twitter supports terrorism, another YouTube video. After Twitter banned Tommy Robinson for speaking the truth about Islam, David Wood decided to see if he could get banned from Twitter also. And he's as provocative as possible, quoting Tommy Robinson, quoting the Quran. Eventually, David will get his wish, and someone else will need to take up the challenge. How about you? Are you ready to take the Get Banned from Twitter challenge? I'm thinking about it, and I'm not even on Twitter. So, anyway, congratulations, David Wood. Keep up the good work. Eventually, you will get what you desire. I like David Wood. He's a good guy. The next one is Savage. I think it's Michael Savage. Anyway. FBI agent refuses to investigate tortured children. Alex Jones, InfoWars. There's a war on for your mind. The love of money is at the heart of the problems afflicting the FBI. Of course, Paul said it best when writing to Timothy, quote, "For the love of money is the root of all evil, which, while some coveted after, they have erred from the faith, and pierced themselves through with many sorrows." 1 Timothy 6:10. Unfortunately, this love of money has left abused and mistreated children unprotected, because the FBI would rather investigate those who damage the profits of the rich. The rich do not take kindly to having their power minimized or the wealth reduced, something that a certain church here in Taipei is having to learn. The church that we once were a part of and are no longer. The next is Dems waived background checks on IT aides, the Daily Caller. Subtitle, 44 Dems, including Wasserman Schultz, exempted Pakistani IT aides from background checks. Close quote. Why do Democrats have to be so evil and stupid? I just don't get it. And I have to assume stupidity is involved, because otherwise, well, it would mean that the Democrats have gone so far beyond evil that we have to assume treason and the worst forms of Satanism. And I actually do assume treason and the worst forms of Satanism. But there's a part of me that hopes that it isn't so. I'm just aghast at all of this. I couldn't live with myself if I had done even half of what has been verified as happening. And I mean verified. And it must be worse than what we see. How could they possibly have hired the Awan brothers like they did? Think of it in terms of drug enforcement. The DEA only captures a tiny fraction of the drugs flowing into America, maybe 5%. I believe that the corruption in Washington is the same. We're seeing maybe 5% of the corruption. Probably less. There are two ways to solve this problem. We can start teaching morals and ethics and demand that parents take responsibility for the monsters that they are creating. Or we can have a military takeover of the U.S. Want to guess which path will be chosen? And yes, the education and the creation of adults from young children. What we do with our young children, or what we did not do, is where and why we are today. We did this. We taught our children to be monsters and idiots. And our parents taught us to be monsters and idiots. And here we are, letting this corrupt and evil government in Washington, D.C. continue to be corrupt and evil. It's our fault, guys. We did this. This next one is about preparation. And let me quote this description for this category. The events that are descending upon us will try our souls. How many of us survive those trials will depend upon your location and your preparations. Please prepare for the worst period of time in human history. America will be ground zero, followed by Europe. Other places will be devastated, but those two areas will be hit the worst, at least as I see it now. No place will be safe, but there are some places that will be safer than others. Please prepare for the worst. Now this one is titled Intellectual Prepping. It's a YouTube video, and this is from Ben Davies of Suspicious Observers. And I started listening to Ben Davidson. I started listening to Ben when I realized that Ezekiel's fire was coming. Well, Ben understands that something like this blast from the sun will hit Earth one day, and he's ready for it. My hope is that you will be ready also. It sounds like he has chosen New Mexico. How about you? And by the way, what he's doing is studying the sun. He's a bit of a meteorologist, and he talks about solar flares and astronomical activity and different physics theories of cosmology. It's a very interesting channel, even if you don't have a background in science. You don't need one. Okay, going on to economic and financial collapse. The next one is, and the fastest growing bank asset in 2017 was subprime mortgages. Ugh, or subprime loans. This is insane. It's from Sovereign Man. Do you have money in the bank? You do? Well, you will never guess how the banks are gambling with your money. No, really, oh, okay. You guessed that they are gambling on people without a job and horrible credit ratings, right? You figured, oh, you did? Good. Because just like this is just like what they did with the Great Recession. I can hardly believe it. What an amazing level of utter stupidity and greed. We had this massive collapse in 2007 and 2008. More like 2008, the financial part of it. And the biggest part of it was because of subprime loans, and we're doing it again. This is stuck. I should have stuck it in the moron section. Okay, but here is the moron section, and we're surrounded by them. Here's this. SJWs, Isle of Dogs for cultural appropriation, a YouTube video. When your whole life is dedicated to crying, moaning, and groaning about some imagined insult, you will always be in search of something to be upset about. Oh, whoa. Someone who admires Japanese culture made a movie with something Japanese in it. Oh, whoa. Some people need to get a life and stop being morons. And then there's this moronic incident. Antler Kitchen and Bar gives vegan protesters a taste of their own medicine. It's a YouTube video. Did you know that you actually need to shoot deer in the fall to keep the larger deer population from starving to death? And yes, many hunters really do go out into the forest to shoot deer to keep the rest of the deer from starving to death. Deer will literally strip an ecosystem bare before starving to death. So unless you want to bring wolves back and all the problems that that entails, which would need to go out and kill the deer for you, you need to hunt the deer yourself. And if you're going to hunt them, you might as well eat them, right? So yes, that is ethical hunting. And you can be a vegan and shoot deer, by the way, for that reason. Oh, and these ethical vegans? Morons. Now, you can be a vegan for health reasons. Be my guest. Knock yourself out. I love you anyway. Don't get me started on the vegans that are morons. Okay. Matthew 24:7. And the category description for this is, we are seeing the fulfillment of the words of Jesus right now. And it seems that Islam is leading the way. What insanity! What is wrong with North America and Europe? Have they and we gone insane? Well, the next one is, new study provides yet more proof of Saudi state sponsorship of ISIS. From Zero Hedge. The content of this article isn't all that important or much of a surprise. But what struck me is this quote. Quote, the majority of ISIS sheikhs, imams and teachers, who were preaching in ISIS-controlled territories and schools were from Saudi Arabia. Close quote. That statement won't surprise you much. But the answer to this question might. How many sheikhs in American and European mosques are from Saudi Arabia? I would venture to say most of them, or enough to make you very nervous. Because remember, even though, say, parents will leave or people will leave Saudi Arabia or other Sunni and or Shiite countries, when they settle in America and Europe, and then they have kids, they want their kids to have a religious education. And so what do? They go to the most authentic, they try to get the most authentic imams and sheikhs and teachers to teach at their mosques. Well, where do you go for the most authentic sheikhs, imams, and teachers? Well, Saudi Arabia. The same sheikhs, imams, and teachers that were teaching at ISIS, that were the ones that were telling ISIS what they should be doing. Does that make you a little nervous? It would make me a lot nervous. And it's happening a little bit here in Taiwan also. Anyway, the next one, Cannes, London. Lead surgeon says hospital like Afghan war zone. 2 more killed overnight. From Breitbart. Hey, if you thought that New York or Chicago was bad, try London. Or maybe you shouldn't. I was there 20 years ago, and you could see the roots of the problem then. But now it must be horrifying. The next one, it used to be men in their 20s. Now children in school uniforms arrive with stab wounds, says top London surgeon. Who are the people doing this? Do I need to say it? Okay, I will. Muslims. And those that aren't Muslim were taught to do this by Muslims. Okay, this one's from the Gog and Magog section. And yes, please, go to EzekielsFire.com. Read Ezekiel's Fire. The implications will startle you and might even make you depressed, but you need it. Ezekiel's Fire is coming. My hope is that you'll be ready for it. This one is Turkey breaks from NATO, refuses to expel Russians. I'm thinking that Turkey has chosen Russia as an ally. It's only a matter of time before Russia, Turkey, and Iran join with others in an invasion of Israel. Then, in the next article, Erdogan, you're a terrorist, Netanyahu, you're a butcher, Israel News, the Jerusalem Post. Genocidal maniac accuses Israel of being a terrorist? It's Oink Erdogan, the Hitler lookalike of the Middle East. And then, Russia-Iran leaders head to Turkey for summit on Syria, the Times of Israel. The alliance that has been formed between Russia, Turkey, and Iran should alarm you. That alliance was strengthened on Wednesday. Please pay attention to this. These other links should help. And let me describe, I'll mention some of them. Erdogan, Putin, Rouhani, tout alliance. IUS for next move. Iran, Russia, Turkey team up to hold sway in Syria, the Times of Israel. Turkey, Russia, Iran urge lasting Syria truce. Russia, Iran, and Turkey set to fight any attempts to fuel separatism and split Syria. RT World News. Press TV, Iran, Russia, Turkey vow to work towards Syria peace. I hope you're ready for this. Here's an article. Russia may build military base in Somaliland. Media. Chris from Poland shared this in the comment section, and it's yet another sign that Kush is being brought into the Gog and Magog alliance. We already have Turkey with a huge base there. Now Russia. Who's next? Iran? Thank you, Chris. I wouldn't have seen this if you hadn't been on top of this. And then for the final section and the final 3 articles. It's about Israel. Please remember Psalm 122:6. Psalm 122:6. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. They shall prosper that love thee. Sha'alu shalom leYerushalayim. Peak fragility. Why the Middle East is doomed. This is from Zero Hedge. Here's the irony of this article. The Middle East would not be doomed if they had embraced and welcomed Israel instead of trying to destroy her. Every single problem described in this article could have been dealt with by adopting the Israeli model of governance. Every single one. Israel took a highly uneducated and completely backward population and turned them into engineers, doctors, scientists, teachers, programmers, lawyers, farmers, and on and on and on. But everyone hates the Jews, so the Middle East is doomed. And you'll see that doom writ large in the horrifying comments at the end of that article. How utterly sick. Okay. Head of Amnesty International parrots jihadi propaganda to shame Israel. It's a YouTube video. Amnesty International is a lying liar. Or should I say, they are lying liars. From start to finish, they lie and lie and lie and lie and lie about Israel. I was there. I watched them do it. And if they are lying this much about someone, who else are they lying about? I mean, that's just the point, right? If you lie and lie and lie and lie and lie and lie and lie, when are we going to be confident that you ever tell the truth? This is why I say that Israel is like the canary in the coal mine. Someone who attacks Israel incessantly is either a moron or a disgusting liar. Either way, you shouldn't listen to them. And then, the last article. No, it's not an article. It's a YouTube video. This is Why Labor Hates the Jews by Jack Buckby. This is depressing news on why Britain will eventually have an even more anti-Semitic foreign policy soon. How utterly sick. Oh, and Jeremy Corbyn, you are an unmentionable. I mean, I don't have words that can be repeated in polite company that can describe you. And I have been fighting, I have been railing against members of the Labour Party in Britain and a number of other people that are horribly anti-Semitic. It's incredible. And of course, this is what you get when you bring in waves of Muslims into your country. If you are anti-Israel, I would have to ask, are you a Muslim? Or are you listening to Muslims? I don't know. Sounds suspicious to me. Anyway, that's the end of the ShockCast for Saturday, April 7th, 2018. For the article written on April 6th, 2018. I'm glad that you were able to spend this time with me. My hope is that you will have a great rest of your weekend. I will certainly try for myself. And may your pastor, whenever you go to church, give you the words that you need to hear, and may you be blessed. See you next time.